You are 62 years old, and you just spent the morning digging up tubers that the younger women walked right past. Hard roots, deep in the soil, the kind that take an hour each and a lifetime of knowing where to look. Your granddaughter is squatting beside you, watching your hands. Tonight she'll eat what you found, and right now, at this exact moment, your body is doing something that should be impossible. The younger women still bleed every month. Their bodies are still built to carry babies. Yours stopped years ago, and you are fine. More than fine. You are the reason this camp doesn't go hungry when the lean months hit. In almost every animal that has ever lived, females stay fertile until they die. Every rat, every bear, every chimpanzee keeps reproducing right up to the end, because that is what evolution is supposed to do. Keep making copies. And yet, humans press stop decades early. Women stop releasing eggs at around 50, then live 30 or 40 more years without a single period. No other great ape does it, and almost no mammal does it either. So what is going on here? Why would evolution build a body that outlives its own fertility by a third of a lifetime? By the end of this video, you'll never look at your grandmother the same way again. That is a promise. Because the answer to why women go through menopause isn't a sad story about bodies breaking down. It is the opposite. Menopause may be one of the most important inventions in human evolution. It changed who we are, how we live, how we raise children, and it might even explain why you are sitting here alive today. So let's start with the obvious question. What is menopause? Actually, here is what most of us assume. Menopause is a failure. The ovaries run out of eggs like a car running out of gas, and the engine just sputters to a stop. That is the story we tell ourselves, and it is half true. Girls are born with all the eggs they'll ever have, around 1 to 2 million of them. By puberty, that number has already crashed to a few 100,000. Every single month, hundreds more die, whether you are pregnant or not. By the late 40s, fewer than 1,000 remain. So yes, the eggs run out. But here is the weird part. That is not the mystery. The mystery is why the rest of the body keeps going decade after decade, as if nothing happened. And there is a second detail that makes the timing even stranger. The ovaries are the first organ in the human body to retire. Your heart will outlast them. Your liver will outlast them. Your brain will keep humming along for decades after the last egg is gone. An egg carries years of a woman's energy in a single cell, so the body guards them like treasure, spending them slowly, and the repair mechanisms inside them simply don't get refreshed the way other cells do. By the time a woman hits 50, her eggs are done. But she herself is barely past the halfway mark of a modern life. So the real question is why the eggs run out. It is why the whole system was scheduled to shut down at 50, when the rest of the body was built to run twice that long. Welcome to the Menopause Club. None of this made sense to scientists for a very long time. For most of the 20th century, menopause was written off as wear and tear, an unfortunate expiry date stamped on the female body. It took decades of fieldwork with grandmothers and a few very patient whales to realize the expiry date was the point. The club is very small, humans, killer whales, short-finned pilot whales, false killer whales, narwhals, and beluga whales. Back in 2018, a team of biologists led by Samuel Ellis surveyed 32 species of toothed whales, looking for any that routinely outlive their own fertility, and that was the entire list. 32 species, 5 with menopause, and here is the pattern nobody can stop noticing. All 5 are long-lived and intensely social, and every single one is a whale. Not a single land mammal makes the cut. Not elephants, not chimpanzees, not one other primate on the planet. Just us, plus a handful of whales. Take chimpanzees, our closest living relatives. A female chimp stays fertile basically her whole life. She can give birth into her 40s, and researchers have found females who were still cycling in their 50s, grey-faced grandmothers still carrying babies. Chimps don't have menopause, and they don't need it. And that tells you something important. Menopause isn't something we inherited from our ape ancestors. It is something we added, a brand new feature bolted onto the human body sometime in the last few million years. So why? Why would natural selection shut down fertility decades early in the one species that supposedly values reproduction above all else? The first answer is mothers. Childbirth is dangerous, and it gets more dangerous with every year you are older. This is not a modern problem. Midwives have known it for thousands of years. In natural fertility communities, the pattern is striking. The Hutterites, a group in North America famous for huge families and no birth control, have been studied for decades, and the average Hutterite woman has her last baby around age 40. Not 50, 40, because after that, the risk of dying in childbirth climbs sharply, and the odds of the baby surviving drop. Evolution doesn't care about your plans. It cares about how many of your genes make it into the next generation. And sometimes the best way to pass on your genes is to stop making babies and start protecting the ones you already have. That is the mother hypothesis. Stop before the gamble turns deadly. The second answer is grandmothers. This is where the story gets beautiful. Back in the 1980s, an anthropologist named Kristen Hawkes spent years with the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer group in Tanzania, and she noticed something the textbooks had missed. The grandmothers were the backbone of the camp. Hadza, women past menopause, spent hours every day digging up tubers, tough underground roots that need skill and patience to find. Young mothers could do that work as easily because they had babies to carry and nurse. So the grandmothers dug, and the food they brought home fed their grandchildren. Hawkes ran the numbers and the math was stunning. A woman's genes spread further through the survival of her grandchildren than through one more risky pregnancy. Grandmothers literally pay for themselves. Here is what the fieldwork actually looked like, because the details matter. Hawkes and her team followed Hadza grandmothers with stopwatches and notebooks, and they found that women past menopause dug for hours every single day, often matching or beating the younger women's haul. The tubers they pulled up are hard to find, hard to dig, and nutritionally dense, exactly the kind of food a weaning child can gather for herself. Then the researchers did the math that changed the field. A Hadza child with an active grandmother weighed more, grew faster, and was far more likely to survive to adulthood than a child without one. When they ran the evolutionary models, the grandmother's contribution was big enough to explain the whole timing of menopause. The off switch paid for itself in grandchildren. If that sounds familiar, it should. Humans are what biologists call cooperative breeders, species where the whole group helps raise the young, like meerkats, marmosets, and naked mole rats. But here is the difference. Meerkat grandmothers don't have menopause, and marmoset grandmothers don't either. They keep breeding while they help. Humans are the only cooperative breeder that ever turned the grandmother's fertility off completely, and that is because we added something the others don't have. Memory. The Hadza grandmother does not just bring home food. She knows where the food is when the rains come, which roots are safe after a drought. That knowledge takes decades to build, and it is worth more than any single pregnancy. So evolution made a trade. Give up your own babies and become the one who keeps everyone else alive. There is a reason grandmothering mattered so much for us specifically, and it is hiding in plain sight. Human children are the most expensive children in the animal kingdom. A chimp infant is mostly independent within a few years. A human child needs years of feeding, carrying, teaching, and protection, so much that a single mother can barely manage one alone. That is why every human society on Earth is built around helpers, and why the grandmother has 15 years of post-reproductive lifeline up so neatly with childhood itself. The long childhood created the job, and menopause created the worker. And it is not just humans. This is where the whales come in. And this is the part that made scientists recheck all their assumptions. Killer whales are the only other animal on Earth with grandmothers like ours. A female orca stops reproducing around 40 and can live into her 90s, which means a grandmother orca can spend more than half her life past menopause. For years, researchers asked why, and then the data came in. In 2012, a team led by Darren Croft found that when a killer whale grandmother is around, her grandchildren survive dramatically better, especially in years when food is scarce. Then, in 2015, Lauren Brent published something even stranger. Postmenopausal orca grandmothers are the ones who lead their pods to salmon. They remember where the fish are when the runs happen and how to find them in a bad year. The grandmother is the living map. The pod literally follows her. And then came the twist that ties it all together. In 2017, Croft and his team showed why grandmother orcas stop reproducing in the first place. It is not that they can, it is that they shouldn't, When a grandmother and her own daughter give birth in the same season, the calves die at much higher rates. The two females compete for the same food, the same space, the same attention. So evolution solved it the brutal way. The older female stops. She steps out of the competition and becomes the helper instead of the rival. The daughter's calves survive, and the grandmother's genes survive through them. And here is a detail that makes the orca story even more human. The survival boost isn't spread evenly. Post-menopausal grandmothers help their sons' calves the most, because sons never leave home. A son stays in his mother's pod for life, so every calf he fathers gets raised right under her nose, while a daughter's calves come with competition built in. The grandmother knows exactly where her help matters most, and she spends it there. If that doesn't sound like a family argument they witnessed, you haven't been to a family dinner lately. Notice what just happened there. The same solution, menopause, evolved twice in two completely different branches of the mammal family tree. Humans on land, whales in the sea, separated by tens of millions of years, and both arrived at the exact same answer. That is what biologists call convergent evolution. And it is a loud signal. When nature keeps building the same weird device over and over, it is usually because the device works. Now here is the uncomfortable part. Some scientists think there is no mystery at all. Their argument goes like this. In ancient times, most women didn't live past 50 anyway. Disease, childbirth, injury, predators. So natural selection never had to build a body that stayed fertile longer, because almost nobody lived long enough to need it. Menopause is just a byproduct of living longer than our plumbing was designed for, and there is some truth to that. But there is a hole in the argument. If ancestral women never lived past 50, then grandmothers would be rare, and evolution could have built a whole system of grandmothering around them. The grandmother hypothesis needs grandmothers to actually exist, and the Hadza data, the orca data, they all point the same way. Women did live long enough, often enough, that grandmothers became a normal part of human life. And once they did, the species that had them won. So why 50 and not 60? Because 50 is the sweet spot. A grandmother needs about 15 years past her last baby to see her grandchildren through the most dangerous stretch of childhood. Start at 50, add 15, and you reach 65, which is exactly the age where a woman in a foraging band could still be strong enough to dig, to carry, to teach. Push menopause to 60, and you lose that overlap. Grandmothers would be too frail by the time they were needed most. Evolution isn't sentimental. It just ran the arithmetic and found the number that worked. Think about what that means for a second. Menopause isn't a bug. It is a feature. It is the moment the female body stops investing in future babies and starts investing in everyone already here. It is the evolutionary handoff from making children to raising them. And it is one of the reasons humans became the species that teaches, that passes down knowledge, that has grandparents at all. You don't get oral history without old people. You don't get a living map of where the food grows without someone who has already survived 50 winters. And now, for the modern twist, we've stretched the post-menopausal decades further than any ancestor could have imagined. A woman who goes through menopause at 50 can now live to 90, 30, or 40 years past the switch. And the body that was built for grandmothering, for digging tubers and leading pods, is now sitting in an office, scrolling a phone, trying to remember where she put her glasses. Hot flashes, bone loss, heart risk. And here is the part that should embarrass the whole medical industry. Menopause has been treated as an afterthought for most of modern medicine. The hormone replacement story has been a decades-long whiplash, and only recently has serious money started flowing into research, with new non-hormonal treatments for hot flashes finally reaching the market. We spent a century studying the machinery of fertility, and almost none on what happens after it shuts off. Then there is the world we actually built on top of that biology. The same decade that silences the egg clock is the decade when careers peak, when kids leave home, when a woman finally has room to breathe, and the culture still does know what to do with her. Women leave the workforce in their 50s at alarming rates, often citing health and caregiving, and the research on menopause in the workplace is only just beginning. We engineered 40-year retirements, but we never updated the story we tell about them. The body is ready for its second act. The script is intact. Before we go further, let's clear up one common confusion, because menopause isn't a single flip of a switch. The transition, perimenopause, usually starts in a woman's mid-40s, with periods going irregular, hormones seesawing, and symptoms drifting in years before the official date. Doctors define menopause as 12 months without a period, which means the body has been changing for years before anyone can name it, and those changes are wildly different from woman to woman. Some barely notice, others get slammed. The average age in most of the world is around 51, but the range is huge, and the whole window is a lot fuzzier than the word menopause suggests. Compare that with how other cultures treat it. In Japan, the word for menopause is konenki, and it doesn't mean breakdown or decay. It means a transition of life, a shift into a new season, and it is talked about the way you talk about puberty. In parts of West Africa and India, women who finish their childbearing years gain new freedoms, ritual roles, a voice they didn't have before. The biology is the same everywhere. The meaning is not, which raises a question worth sitting with. If evolution built this stage to turn women into the keepers of the group, why do we keep insisting it is a loss? And here is the strangest irony of all. We now spending billions to fight the very switch that evolution installed. The fertility industry exists because of the gap between the egg clock and the human lifespan. Women freeze their eggs in their 20s, then pay tens of thousands of dollars later to use them, as if the body's oldest lesson could be outsmarted with a credit card. IVF clinics report that the single most common reason couples show up is age, the same age the body decided, millions of years ago, that grandmothering was worth more than another baby. We built an entire industry on the assumption that menopause is a problem to be solved. The evidence says it is a solution. And there is one more mystery hiding in the corner, and it is this. Why is it always women? Men stay fertile much longer. A 70-year-old man can still father a child, and plenty of them do. The reason comes down to the economics of biology. Sperm are cheap, eggs are expensive, and each one carries years of a woman's energy and risk. So the female body guards its eggs like treasure, spends them slowly, and eventually decides the cost of one more baby is higher than the value of the ones already born. Males never face that arithmetic. They can keep gambling forever because a single gamble costs them almost nothing. The asymmetry is brutal, but it explains why the switch exists at all. The sex that invests more gets the off switch. The sex that invests nothing keeps playing. But the males aren't off the hook either. And this is the part nobody talks about. Men don't too get a fertility off switch, but they do get a hidden tax. Sperm quality declines with age, and the risk of new mutations in a child climbs steadily with a father's years, which is why the children of older fathers show slightly higher rates of certain conditions. Evolution just collects the cost differently. Women pay up front, with a hard deadline. Men pay in the small print, spread across decades. Either way, somebody pays. Here is what the science says. Clearly, menopause is an ending only in the narrowest sense. Fertility ends. The usefulness doesn't. The grandmother is not a leftover. She is the upgrade. The woman who has already raised children survived the chaos, learned where the food grows and where the danger hides. That woman is worth more to the group than a dozen first-time mothers. Evolution didn't stop her to be cruel. It stopped her so she could do the most valuable job of all, keeping the next generation alive. So the next time you sit across from your grandmother, remember this. That woman spent decades of her life bleeding every month, building the machinery for babies she may never have had. And then one day, the machinery shut off, and she kept going. Stronger in some ways, freer in others. The younger women were still digging for their own futures. She was digging for yours. Menopause didn't end her story. It started the part of the story that includes you, and that, more than any hormone, is what the switch was always for.